Ming Chen is here to do our update
You
from
want to
the
just speak?
People's
Yeah.
Campaign. Um, I don't know, I imagine most of you know that the FOR chapters are mobilizing partners with the Poor People's Campaign, and we've done a good bit of work with them over the last year. And their latest effort has been with the midterms to get out the vote. And I would say that they had some success, they and the many other people who roused voters who helped with the results of the vote. I finished introducing Ming, so take the stage.
Oh, thank you, Jean. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's nice to see so many familiar faces on the screen. A lot of you I haven't seen in years. So. But thanks for inviting me to be here. I think most of you are familiar with the campaign, but maybe I'll just provide a one paragraph summary of what we're about. In 2017, the Reverend Doctors William Barber II and Liz Theo Harris began the new Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival, taking on the mantle of the original Poor People's Campaign created by Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in 1967 to address what he called the interlocking injustices of systemic racism, poverty, and militarism. But which sadly faded away after his assassination in 1968. And while the original campaign focused on economic justice sorts of issues, the current campaign also addresses environmental degradation, recognizing that poor people, especially Black, Indigenous, and people of color, tend to be the most harmed by environmental injustices and the least prepared to adapt to deleterious changes due to climate change. And to those four interlocking injustices or evils, as we also refer to them, we have also added a fifth, which is the distorted moral narrative of religious nationalism. So I guess you could say our theme for 2022 has been, if you look at some of the reports we've published, it's Waking the Sleeping Giant, recognizing that there's over 140 million poor and low wealth people in this country. And so that's a significant portion of the population, a very significant portion of the electorate. And yet only a relatively small proportion of those folks who are eligible to vote are voting. And so the focus over the first half of the year was the mass Poor People's and Low Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls, which occurred on June 18th, 2022. This was originally supposed to happen in June of 2020 ahead of the presidential election, but obviously had to be postponed 2 years in a row due to the pandemic. The event this year was attended by tens of thousands of people from over 40 states. Washington State sent a contingent of 100 mostly impacted persons to the assembly, and this was made possible through the generous donations of individual donors as well as some institutional donors such as churches. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my notes to scroll here. And we also got some additional funding through the national campaign. Of course, the Moral March to the polls only got started on June 18th. The period between then and November 8th was spent reaching out to over 5.1 million poor and low propensity voters in 15 states through a series of weekly text banks, encouraging them to do whatever they needed to make their vote count. So I will just show you a little graphic here. Do. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to hit share screen first. So hang on a second. Oh dear. I haven't done this in a while.
Uh-huh.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So as you can see, we were focusing on 15 states. These were states where there were particularly tight races, between folks who would have us ignore the needs of the poor and folks who were looking out for everybody else. Let me see if I can make it a full screen. So it's not hard to see why we focused on some of these states. Um, I would say we saw some, very positive results. For example, in Michigan, where we were able to, where both houses of the state legislature as well as the governorship are now in Democratic hands, and you know the Poor People's Campaign is strictly nonpartisan, but so thus far it's been mostly the Democratic candidates who have been the ones least unfavorable to the poor in this country. Okay, let me stop that screen share. Um, so Michigan, also Pennsylvania, of course, we saw significant wins. I personally haven't really been following the legislative races in Alabama and Mississippi, so I can't really speak to the results there. Um, Now, the text bank campaign is not actually over because, as you know, there's an important runoff election in Georgia on December 6th. And so the Poor People's Campaign text bank campaign will be resuming on November 22nd with, of course, the focus on the state of Georgia. So here in Washington, of course, we are not considered a swing state and we have vote by mail. So we didn't need the kind of intensive get out the vote effort directed at voters in the 15 states I mentioned previously. We have been hosting monthly online open houses as we geared up for the mass assembly in Washington, D.C. The highlight of each open house is testimony by 2 or 3 impacted persons who provide firsthand accounts of the challenges they face daily while facing those interlocking evils of systemic racism, poverty, ecological devastation, militarism, and the war economy, and that distorted moral narrative. Um, Now, each state's contingent to the mass assembly in DC was asked to designate a number of impacted persons to provide testimony at the June 18th event. Now, with over 40 states represented, the event organizers could only select one person from each state to actually speak on stage. Our coordinating committee found about a dozen volunteers who were invited to prepare their testimony, and they were extensively coached individually and had the opportunity to meet as a group to bond and learn each other's story before the trip across the country. And in the end, our state, were ably represented by Jin Lee from Tacoma, and he spoke of his family's struggles as immigrants from South Korea. The Sunday before the election, we hosted our first ever Souls to the Polls event held at Plymouth Congregational Church in downtown Seattle. That event included testimony from 5 impacted persons and was followed by a march to the nearest ballot drop box, just a block from Lumen Field. As it happened, we arrived at the ballot box and were depositing our ballots just as the Seahawks scored one of their fourth quarter touchdowns against the Arizona Cardinals. And so our votes were met by a deafening roar. And I will just show you a brief clip of that event, if you'll allow me. I go to back to share screen, and I got to remember to hit share sound. Let's do this. So that was a lot of fun. Um, I should also mention again because we are um, you know a 501c3 organization, at least through our fiscal sponsor. We have to remain scrupulously nonpartisan, but I know that our Lower Columbia Regional Subcommittee was thrilled that they flipped Washington 3, and a racist election denying conspiracy theorist was kept out of office. Um, and maybe our biggest news this year is that the Reverend Kelly Brown, the senior pastor at Plymouth United Church of Christ, who you saw leading the singing and the march there in that video, has joined our campaign as Washington State's newest tri-chair. Reverend Kelly joins the Reverend Bianca Davis Lovelace, who's been our only tri-chair for the past couple of years. Officially, each state committee is supposed to have 3 tri-chairs, at least one of these being a faith leader, one a person impacted by poverty, and one a person of color. I think both Reverend Kelly and Reverend Bianca can claim to be, tick all of those boxes. But we are certainly open to more people participating in the leadership role or helping to organize a regional subcommittee or committee, or serving on one of our work teams, the action team, the communication team, legislative advocacy team, or the outreach team. Those action teams are still in their formative stages. And looking forward, our legislative action team is researching what issues we need to be advocating around in Olympia. Our most active regional committees currently are the Lower Columbia, Grace Harbor, Seattle, Snow King, Tacoma, and Pierce County. And there is potential for new RCs to form around Bellingham, Olympia, South King County, Spokane, and Yakima, because we do have people that have been showing up at our meetings from all of those places, but so far they haven't been able to get a core group started in those cities. And the regional committees are, to be on the lookout for local issues affecting poor and low-wage workers that they can have a voice in. Our next major fundraising event is a very special one on December 10th at 2 p.m. It's a joint presentation of Washington Poor People's Campaign and Families Shoulder to Shoulder, which is a group doing prison advocacy work. This will consist of a viewing of the powerful film Since I've Been Down, followed by a panel discussion that includes Kimante Carter, the main subject of the film, as well as the filmmaker Gilda Shepard. This event hasn't been publicly announced yet, but if you get on our mailing list, you'll find out details as soon as they are available. And I believe this will be a hybrid event, so there will be the option of attending in person or online. I should add that Kimante Carter and Willie Nobles, both of whom are featured in the film, have just been released from prison after decades behind bars, and both were able to vote for the first time in their lives in this November 8th. So if you want to get involved or just learn more about the Poor People's Campaign, I encourage you to go to the National Campaign's website. I'll put a link to that in the chat. Scroll down on the homepage to the US map graphic and find the box that says Find My State Committee. And there you can just enter your zip code and be connected to the Washington State Campaign website and email. Those are the highlights of the year so far, and thank you for sticking around to the end. I do hope many of you will join us in the campaign. We always end our meetings and online presentations with a chant. So if you will permit me, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And when I say forward together, you reply, not one step back, and we'll do that a total of 3 times. Okay, ready? Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Great. Thank you. And if anyone has questions, I can stick around and try to answer those if we have any time left.
And we have some songs to inspire us further that I think Sarah's going to play from the Poor People's Campaign.
Yes.
We are a new unsettling force. You say that?
We are a new unsettling force.
And we are powerful.
And we are powerful.
We are a new unsettling force.
We are a new unsettling force.
And we are here.
And we are here.
We are a new unsettling force.
We are a new unsettling force.
For liberation.
For liberation.
And we got nothing to lose.
And we got nothing to lose.
But our chains.
But our chains.
We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new unsettling force, and we're here. A new unsettling force for liberation, and we got nothing to lose but our chains. We are a new unsettling force, and we are powerful. A new unsettling force, and we're here. A new unsettling force for liberation, and we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our chains. And we got nothing to lose but our
Seven, 8. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got to all go down to jail. Everybody's got a right to live. Everybody's got a right to live. To live. Everybody's got a right to love. To love. Everybody's
So I hope we're all inspired going into our day. And I want to say thank you to the organizers of the retreat, myself and David Lambert and John Repp and Carrie Griffiths, Vivi Bartran, and Sarah Pham. And we all appreciate your joining us, and we have a lot of information on the website if you have questions about the people here and what went on, and also have a resource list of other books and resources about the topic of economic justice and peace. And we are going to keep the Zoom stage open for about half an hour if people want to stay and talk with each other. And Vivi, I believe you're going to be the sort of the hostess of that. But when we did it before, it sort of got together and was a helpful conversation with the people who decided to stay. So again, thank you all for coming, and forward together.